Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here, and last night I rolled credits on Senua Saga Hellblade 2, the sequel to the first game that I really thought was enjoyable to a certain extent. With the first game, I got maybe, I don't know, 2 hours into it, and I just sort of fell off, and I restarted it multiple times as sort of gaps, sort of emerged where I went a few months without playing it, needed to start over because I couldn't remember exactly what I was doing or how the combat worked. And so with the first game, for whatever reason, it did not get its hooks in me. But with this second game, I like it a lot more, which I know maybe is a little bit controversial to say. A lot of people seem to enjoy the first game more. I don't know. I think narratively, the second game is much more engaging. I felt like with the first game, at least as far as I got into it, it was a little bit circular, right? Like where you're doing these sort of perspective puzzles, constantly fighting the same bosses, that kind of stuff. I don't know. This one felt like it had a little bit more variety and a little bit of a better kind of pacing to it overall. So I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. And I think to talk about some of the discourse that exists around this game, which has been really kind of interesting and borderline fascinating to watch, right? Because Xbox is in an interesting place. Obviously, they've had all kinds of issues over the past few weeks to months to years, really, if you want to go all the way back to the launch of the Xbox One. So first of all, I just want to talk about this as a game and kind of put aside the Xbox just holistic discourse. I really love this. I think this is the type of exclusive title that Xbox needs more of, and it couldn't have come at a better time, honestly, for them as a platform. So I think the graphics on this are the best that I've ever seen in a video game, right? I know that's a little bit probably sounds like hyperbole, a lot of exaggeration. But, I sort of racked my brain as I was playing it to think about, what games have I seen that are better than this? And I really can't think of anything. I think God of War Ragnarok is close to this in some ways, but this is just on a whole new level. And honestly, this is the first time I played something on my Series X since it's been available that felt like, to me, a true next-gen visual experience. Again, I was playing it on my OLED TV. I had Dolby Vision turned on. It just looked really, really great. There are deep reds in a lot of the sequences, a lot of great lighting effects, really dark shadows when you need them. There are a lot of sequences that take place sort of deep underground, that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to get into spoilers, just kind of as an FYI, in terms of the content of the story and that sort of stuff. But it just really visually is striking. It's actually pretty amazing. And it feels like you're playing through a movie to a certain extent, which there are some games that maybe kind of recapture that same effect, but this does it in a way that's so impressive that it's kind of mind-boggling. The sound design in it is awesome too. I mean, when you crank up the game, they tell you, that the preferred way to play it is with a pair of headphones. I had my wired Xbox headphones on for most of my playthrough of this game. And, as a character, Senua, when she is sort of going through different things and really just kind of walking you through the narration of the game, you hear sort of the voices in her head, and you can hear it in one ear and then another ear, and it kind of goes back and forth. And you hear that push and pull, and it really contributes a lot to the narrative effect of the story, but the sound design is fantastic in it too. So if we think about it from a visual perspective and a sound perspective, I haven't really played anything like this. The sound, perhaps, you could say the first game does that also, but here it's just really perfected. It works really well. The gameplay, I think, is where a lot of people get tripped up with this. I actually think the gameplay in this sequel is better than the first one. I really hated the gameplay in Hellblade 1. It's similar here, but I feel like it's a little bit more balanced. But you have to kind of understand, I think this is meant to be a primarily narrative game, which is not to give it an excuse for gameplay being clunky, which at times the swordplay can be a little bit wonky. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It took me, a couple of minutes to really sort of get used to it, especially my first sort of combat encounter in the game. And in fact, if you look at the settings for the swordplay and the gameplay, you've got some things you can tweak there. It's set to dynamic, but then you can put it on easy or medium or hard or whatever the settings are. I had to adjust it a little bit there to find something that would work for me, but I did find that. And after that, I was able to kind of navigate the sword fights without too much trouble kind of getting through the game. It's almost like each encounter is sort of like a chess match. You kind of know when you have to evade and then strike, and you've got sort of a tool in this version of the game or in this sequel where you can use a mirror to essentially kind of slow down time and stagger an enemy and then deal a lot of damage and that kind of stuff. So anyway, even though I don't think the gameplay is necessarily groundbreaking or amazing, I think it works well in the context of this game, which again is supposed to be, I think, an immersive narrative experience, and that's sort of the primary goal. Which again, I'm not trying to give, poor gameplay sort of a pass here because I don't think it's poor. I just don't think it's going to be everybody's cup of tea, and it takes a little bit of getting used to. So from that experience or from that perspective, I think it ends up working once you sort of get into a rhythm of sort of playing it. But I will tell you, having gone, through the full 5 to 6 hour duration of the game, which it is short, some people don't like that. I love it. Again, as a dad who doesn't have a ton of time to sit and play through a 60-hour game, I love the length of this. I thought it was awesome. I beat it over the course of about 3 days or so, 2.5, 3 days. I felt like I was completely immersed in what was happening in this story. I think toward the end, it gets a little too abstract for its own good, but the sort of central themes here of overcoming your personal demons, overcoming people doubting you and all of that kind of stuff really sort of rings through, any other shortcomings the game may have. So, I don't assign number scores to games, but I think this is a true great game, a truly great game that's an exclusive for Xbox. And that, again, I think it couldn't have come along at a better time. Now, just to comment briefly on sort of the discourse surrounding whether or not this is a hit game or the hit game that the system needed at this moment. I mean, this is not going to be a console seller because it is, I think, a very niche type of game. It's not going to appeal to everybody. It's not an Uncharted. It's not a Last of Us type of game. Actually, in some ways, I would say it's a little more comparable to The Last of Us, actually, than something like Uncharted. But anyway, it's not really in the same vein of those types of games. This to me is a work of art. Like, it is a beautiful game. It's an unnerving game. It's depressing, but there are shades of joy that sort of pop up in different moments through the game. So it's niche. It is, I would say, again, a piece of art, and it's not going to appeal to everybody. But I think it's an amazing feather for Xbox to have in their cap. I think that this is, to use some of the terms I've seen floating around, I think this is a win for Xbox. Like, it's a really great game that I think everybody should check out. And again, if you look at the Metacritic score, it's an 81, something like that. I think it should be higher than that. But again, maybe it's because it's a game that's to taste, for lack of a better descriptor there. Again, it's not going to work for everybody. But visually, sound design, narratively, I think it's fantastic. I think if you love those types of games, you should absolutely give it a shot. And if you haven't played the first one, I would say that's okay. You do get a recap of the story briefly at the start of this one to kind of catch you up with things, and you should just jump into it and enjoy it. So if you've played Hellblade 2, let me know what you think in the comments below. Am I way off the mark? Do you disagree, or do you think I'm kind of in line with your own take on it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And as always, thanks so much for watching.